weapons with them. I'll tell you right now, there is nothing worse than a locked up firearm. There's nothing worse than an empty firearm. The only thing worse than not having a gun when you need it is having a gun when you need it and the daggone thing isn't loaded. They kept their weapons with them because they needed to be ready to defend themselves. Now, a second case in the scriptures. The story of Esther is actually the same time period. It's actually a little later than the time of Nehemiah, but the nation of Israel had been deported to these other foreign places, and some of them were in Babylon, which then was taken over by the Persians. And Esther, the story of Esther, is about an effort of the enemy to wipe out the Jews all over Persia. And in Esther chapter 3, we have this wicked cabinet member of King Xerxes. His name is Haman. He comes and he gets King Xerxes to agree to wipe out all the Jews. And Xerxes, he doesn't know any better. He's just like, sure, whatever you want to do is fine with me. And this is how it's laid out. Haman says, there is a certain people dispersed and scattered among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom, whose customs are different from those of all the other people, and who do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will put 10,000 talents of silver into the royal treasury for the men who carry out this business. So the king took his signet ring from his finger and gave it to Haman, the son of whoever that is, the Agagite. And there's a whole another story behind this Agag thing, but we can't go there. Anyhow, it's a very deep situation. So he gave him the signet ring to Haman, the enemy of the Jews. Keep the money, the king said to Haman, and do with these people as you please. Then on the 13th day of the first month, the royal secretaries were summoned. They wrote out in the script of each province and in the language of each people all Haman's orders to the king's satraps and governors in the various provinces and the nobles of the various peoples. These were written in the name of King Xerxes himself and sealed with his own ring. Dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the order to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews. See, did you hear that? Destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and little children. Doesn't that sound like ISIS?
Yeah.
All on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality so that they would be ready for that day. Now, what you need to know about the laws of the Medes and the Persians is if the king sent out a law, it could never, ever, ever be changed. He could not recant a law that he declared, and he gave his signet ring to Haman and said, just do whatever you want. Now, is that stupid or what? So Haman takes the signet ring and writes up the laws, put the king's seal on it, so let it be written, so let it be done. And the word is sent throughout the entire Persian Empire. Now God had, incidentally, Ray prayed earlier, for such a time as this, comes right out of this book. Esther was a Jewish gal who had been raised up for such a time as that. She was made queen. She was the queen of King Xerxes, Jewish gal, and he didn't know any better. And she begins to petition the king. Now, she petitions the king. She wins the king over. She lets the king know that what Haman has done is to make a law to wipe out all of her people. And the whole thing, the devil's mischief, is turned around on himself, and the law can't be undone. But the king makes a new law. And the new law that the king makes is that the Jews are able to defend themselves. And so, chapter 8 picks up with this. The king's edict granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate any armed force of any nationality or province that might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. The day was appointed for the Jews to do this in all the provinces of King Xerxes. It was the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. Chapter 9 tells how it all panned out. So on the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, the edict commanded by the king was to be carried out. And on this day, the enemies of the Jews had hopes to overpower them, but now the tables were turned, and the Jews got the upper hand over those who hated them. The Jews assembled in their cities and all the provinces of King Xerxes to attack those seeking their destruction. No one would stand against them, because the people of all the other nationalities were afraid of them. And all the nobles of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, and the king's administration helped the Jews, because fear of Mordecai, who's another character in this story, had seized them. Mordecai was prominent in the palace. His reputation spread throughout the provinces, and he became more and more powerful. The Jews struck down all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and they did what they pleased to those who hated them. In the citadel of Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. They also killed, I'm not going to go through this list, but these are the sons of Haman, the 10 sons of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. But they did not lay their hands on the plunder. 2 times in the context here, they throw that little passage in there because they're showing that their goal was not to take what didn't belong to them. Their goal was to protect themselves. So as we look through this passage, the Jews are faced with racial violence, genocide, and extermination. It is open season on the Jews. Haman took the signet ring of the king and said, "Open season on the Jews." When the Jews are given the legal right of self-defense, they use it. They did not choose a nonviolent approach. Think ISIS again. They did not take a nonviolent approach to resolving this challenge that they were having. They do not choose a nonviolent approach, but they do choose the sword. And again, they were not military, not law enforcement, but everyday Jewish citizens of Persia using weapons of violence to defend themselves. Now, these are both Old Testament examples. And there's some people who, they got some idea that the Old Testament has absolutely no application to anything today, and the New Testament is the only thing you need to pay attention to or read. That's not really good theology, but it would be important for us to take a look into the New Testament at least one situation where